What's up guys, it's Brandon Flash. Just want to give you guys an update on how my car is holding up. I now have 184,000 miles on the car and now I live on the road full time. So what did it take to get here? Let's get to it. If you're new here, my name is Brandon Flash. I'm the EV Nomad. This is my 2015 Model S 70D. I travel the country full time in it and I have 185,000 miles on it. I bought it last year at 106,000 miles as the cheapest all-wheel drive autopilot equipped Tesla for sale in the country anywhere. We'll start with talking about some of the things I had to do to get it from last time we talked, which was at 150,000 miles all the way to now 185,000 miles. Overall, the car has held up pretty well, but there were some repairs we had to make. Let's talk about them. If you haven't already, check out my 150,000 mile video. I go through the whole story of this car, how I got it, things I had to do between 106,000 and 150,000. But we're not going to talk about that today. That's for that video. Today we're going to talk about 150,000 to 185,000, as well as some optional things I did just to make the car better and more reliable while on the road full time. Before we get to it, quick shout out to my Patreon patrons. Really appreciate your support. Link down below if you'd like to join. Would really appreciate it. Some of you may remember after my last trip that my 12-volt battery warning came on. I did make a video about that. I went with an OMU lithium iron phosphate 12-volt battery. Should last much longer than the Tesla 12-volt battery, as well as delivering better performance. And with all the electronics I run in my car, including now a 12-volt inverter for powering my laptop and other things, it's very important to have less voltage sag and a more reliable 12-volt battery. It won't leave me stranded on the road. Not long after I got back from that trip, I also had my AC go out. Unfortunately, I did have to bring it to Tesla with no appointment. Did take a few days. I didn't have a loaner car, but I did end up borrowing a Model 3. Thank you, Eric. You can see some of those videos I made. But the AC repair, they ended up replacing all 3 active louvers in the front end of the car. So there's one on either side for the AC condensers, as well as one for the radiator with 2 flaps. The first repair was $678, and then 2 weeks later I ended up having to bring it back, and that one was about $400. So about $1,100 to repair the AC on a car with, I believe, about 175,000 at that time. I'm not complaining about $1,100 for the AC. It's kind of just par for the course of having a high mileage car. At my visit for the first AC repair, I did have some maintenance items done as well. I had a brake fluid recommended every 2 years because the brake fluid actually attracts moisture and that can reduce the boiling. When I was ripping through the Malibu Canyon the week prior, I actually got a pretty soft brake pedal, so I definitely knew it was time. And at that same visit, I also had what's called the AC desiccant service done. So in the condenser for the air conditioning system, there's a desiccant bag, and what that essentially does is absorbs excess moisture in the AC refrigerant system. And that's a service item every 2 years, especially on the Model S, because the Model S has a pretty convoluted AC system with a lot of different lines kind of running all over, especially with the split condenser system. So it's pretty important to do that, especially with how much the AC system is used on the Model S. Beyond even just the normal cooling the cabin and things, it's also cooling the battery pack, the drive units, the inverter, the high voltage junction box, all that fun stuff. All of that is cooled with the refrigerant loop by in turn cooling the actual coolant. I did cord the tires on the inner edge, and I've since replaced them with a new set of Nokian Z-Line all-season tires. And since then, I've actually had them flipped, which dismounted on the wheel and then put the inside to the outside on the opposite side. So that way they can wear a little bit more evenly. The Model S, especially when you drive it really loaded up like I do, it can really put a lot of extra wear on that inner edge. So I was trying to negate the effect of that and get the longest life out of those tires. I had that done by Tread Connection in Minneapolis. Now let's talk about my very hard to not notice hood. I had this done by Protect My Tesla in Minneapolis. I'll show you guys some clips of how that was done. Essentially what they do in order to wrap the hood, they first had to wash and clay bar the entire hood. They then laid down a satin black film on the entire hood. And then on top of that, they put this reflective pattern. And this reflective pattern was actually fairly involved to put together. So what they had to do is They printed this pattern onto a sheet of white reflective material. They printed it in this grayish to match the car as close as possible. They then laminate that entire sheet, and then they use a die cutter in order to cut out the individual shapes. They weed out all the excess material, and then they put a masking material on top of that in order to be able to then lay it on top of the satin black. The tricky part about using that masking material is the masking material doesn't flex how it needs to in order to contour to the hood. And that makes it challenging in that they have to cut reliefs into the masking material without disturbing the pattern or the alignment of the different elements of the pattern on the hood. So thank you very much to Protect My Tesla and Platinum Auto Wraps in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Those guys are excellent. On the front end, you can see I did add a light bar. So what I did to do that is I actually removed the entire front end of the car. I did have to modify the nose cone a little bit, and then I actually mounted it to the very bottom of the bumper bar with 2 screws. And then I wired it via a relay to the high beams on the car. So what's cool is that on a Model S with automatic high beam, I now have an automatic light bar that really helps illuminate the road. Especially in rural Maine, other parts of rural America, it's really nice to be able to turn darkness into day and really be able to see deer or any other things that might run out or potentially damage the car when driving at night. A preventative repair that you may have heard me mention in a prior video was actually replacing my media control unit, or also known as the MCU or the touchscreen. They have a very common failure with the Tegra chip, and what happens is the flash chip actually wears out from too many read-write cycles, and it wasn't really designed for that many cycles and the logging that the Tesla does. So I had to replace preventatively. I chose to go with a remanufactured MCU that ran about $1150. The reason I went with a remanufactured unit rather than just replacing the board is that my screen was actually bubbling as well. So the screen was delaminating from the outer layer, and I still had 3G connectivity, which is going away any day now, especially with 5G rolling out. So it was nice to be able to upgrade to LTE, get a new screen, and get a new chip for increased reliability at the cost of $1150. Some may ask why I didn't go with the MCU2 or the infotainment upgrade. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't an option for my car. My car is a little bit of a weird car and doesn't have a power lift like most Model S's do. And there's some sort of incompatibility with upgrading to MCU2 and having a manual liftgate due to not having a power liftgate module. But we'll get into how I used not having a power liftgate module positively by adding a 12-volt outlet. I'll show you guys that now. If we come into the hatch, hopefully you guys can see. Right up here, I actually added another 12-volt outlet, or actually 2 more specifically, and I wired it into the power liftgate module. And at that same time, I actually added hitch wiring as well. You can see that right here as I pull that out. I've got it tucked up in there, and that's to go with the aftermarket hitch that I added. I'll link that video up above. I wouldn't recommend doing it yourself. Pay a professional to do it, well worth every penny. It was not a fun install at all, but it came in really handy when I had a hitch carrier and drove all the way across the country from Arizona to Minneapolis. Check that video up. Check that video out. That one is up. I'll link it above for you. But you can see how it did with carrying a hitch basket and a fully loaded car all the way across the country. You might be wondering why I have all my doors open. Well, let me tell you. I added some Abstract Ocean LEDs on all 4 doors, in the trunk, as well as in the front. You can't really see in the front because I have too much stuff up there, but they make such a difference at night. You can see stuff in the footwells much easier, both front and rear. And then there's also lights on the doors, so that if you have them open, it makes it more aware for other people driving by so they don't hit your door. And it also illuminates anything on the ground, so that way you don't step into those puddles. And it's just a little bit more premium experience. On the rear of the car on the hatch, I actually added upgraded Abstract Ocean LEDs as well. I do have a promo code down below that will get you 10% off your first purchase with Abstract Ocean. Use code Nomad, it's spelled like EV Nomad, and that can really save you some money on your first order. I'll show you some additional products as well. Coming inside the car, you'll see another product that I added. I did add a matte screen protector as well. Kind of hard to tell right now. Let's put it in screen cleaning mode. So there you can see the matte finish, much better than the glossy even on my tablet here or on the instrument cluster if it wants to focus. There we go. I do still need to replace my instrument cluster screen because it's very delaminated, but that's been a pretty low priority for me. But it's really nice, especially protecting my brand new MCU that I had replaced, and just keeps it a lot nicer, and the fingerprints are much less noticeable with the matte versus the glossy. On the outside of the car, you may notice some additional vinyls on the wheels, on the repeaters, as well as on the door handles, just to add some subtle touches to make the car my own. We can actually see the mud flaps that I added. Those just attach onto the rear bumper here. There's some stuff. Those are on all four wheels. Helps keep some of the bush splash and tires from getting on. Keep it a little bit cleaner and do some rock on the bumpers as well as the side of the car from the front wheels. There we have it. Those are some of the things I've done to prepare 80,000 mile, now 185,000 mile Tesla Model S for life on the road full time. Downtime isn't really an option for me, so I had to do things preventatively, and that's how I recommend you do repairs on any car. I think it just makes for a lot better ownership experience. When you take care of a car, the car takes care of you. I know it sounds silly, but it's true. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button down below, as well as the subscribe button for future content and road trips. Have a great rest of your day.